Welcome to my channel. My name is Madyson, and for a long time now I've really wanted to start my own YouTube channel. For my 9 to 5, I actually do make content professionally for a law firm, but I really wanted to try my hand at my own creativity. I wanted to come to this godforsaken platform and talk about the stuff I want to talk about, but I didn't really know what to settle on. I love a lot of things: movies, music, Berserk, Kendrick Lamar. I'm a gym girly, I'm a tarantula mom, I'm a regular mom. There's a plethora of things that I could talk about all day, and that's when it hit me. I'm just a yapper. I just like yapping. I just like talking into the void that is Beyonce's internet. And so basically that is what I have decided. Whatever I want to talk about, whenever I want to talk about it, whatever piques my interest, that's what I'm going to talk about. You can choose to listen or not. This is my world and you're just living in it. Or this is my channel and you're just watching it, hopefully. But for my very first video, I wanted to do something that I was a bit more familiar with. I watch a lot of movie commentary on YouTube, specifically horror movie commentary and explanations and breakdowns and critiques, all that. I love Horror Mind, Found Flicks, Film Comics Explained. Recently, and she doesn't even do like horror movies all that often, but Kenny JD is so damn funny. Bad movie reviews, if you want to hear about bad, terrible, awful Tubi movies, yeah, go listen to her, go watch her content. She is amazing. So for my very first YouTube video, I had to talk about a horror movie. There were so many to choose from. I get into so many lores. I go down so many rabbit holes, but none more than the Grudge franchise. But today I specifically wanted to talk about Juon the Grudge, the original Japanese version. I have always loved the Grudge movies ever since my Aunt Maggie traumatized me at the ripe old age of 7 years old by showing me Sarah Michelle Gellar get absolutely traumatized by this spooky bitch. Yeah, I was hooked. Any croak that bitch had to make, I was there to listen to it. I actually believe that same year I went as Kayako for Halloween. I tried to find the picture of it, but just know my mom put me in an oversized white t-shirt, sprayed it with blood, put blue makeup on me, and sent me out into the world to get candy from strangers. Not only did Maggie, and big shouts out to Maggie, love you bitch, not only did Maggie engulf me into the world of horror movies as a whole, but also into Japanese cultures, manga, music, movies, the works. And I really do mean mangas, music, movies, the works. Just so you know I'm not a fraud. What y'all know about Utada Hikaru? Get you a cool aunt that'll put you on some shit. Side note, don't watch this movie. Don't watch that. Berserk? Always recommend. Always recommend Berserk. I'm just trying to show y'all stuff about me at this point. I just want to show y'all my cool things. But anyways, needless to say that of course I would eventually move into the world of Japanese horror movies. Something I get excited about too is when I find out that an American movie actually was a remake of a Japanese horror movie. I don't know what it is over there. They just do horror so much better. The Grudge, One Missed Call, The Ring. I think there was one called Dark Water or Water, something with water, something with liquid. It was scary. It was scary as hell. Again, this is not going to be a movie commentary channel. I will probably do it here and there, but I could yap about horror movies all day. What I appreciate so much about The Grudge, the American version specifically, is that they didn't like rework it and rewrite it to be for an American audience. They didn't put it in the suburbs of like San Diego or something like that. Not only did they keep it in Japan, but they kept the original director, Takashi Shimizu. He wrote and directed the first 4 original Juon movies and then the first 2 American remakes. Anything beyond that was out of his hands. We don't talk about that. We don't know her. We don't talk about Bruno.
Oh my God, what is that? Oh my God, what is that?
But all his movies, all these films that his hands touched, they're not above criticism, but I could watch them all day, every day, any day of the week, so long as I am in a brightly lit room and I have a buddy. I mean, talking about this movie it does make me uncomfortable a little bit. I did have to watch the movie several times to make this video, and my God. And it doesn't help that last night I actually started watching the Paranormal Activity franchise, and I hadn't seen it since like adolescence, and they are a lot scarier than I remember them being, especially when you're home alone, like I am now recording this video on a camera that I'm gonna have to watch back later and hope to not see some spooky shit. But I digress. But back to The Grudge. What's interesting to know and semi-important to know was that Juon the Grudge, the film that I'll be talking about today, is not the original very first movie in the franchise. Most people attribute it to be because it's the first theatrical release, but actually Takashi Shimizu made 2 movies prior to Juon the Grudge. Juon the Curse and Juon the Curse 2. They were straight to video movies, but they were so well received by audiences in Japan that Takashi went on to direct, write Juon the Grudge, Grudge and release it to theaters. Now, I chose Juon the Grudge to talk about instead of The Grudge, or instead of any other one of this 13 film franchise. Yes, there's 13 films, because I thought it was my way of paying respects to this franchise. While it is not my favorite, actually The Grudge is my favorite. Don't come for me, horror snobs, don't come for me. It was the first one I saw. It affected me deeply as a child. You know it did to you too. Don't play with me. But this one is just so great. It's so eerie. It's so sad and so serious. Like, I don't know, there's something about it that's just so good, and I wanted to talk about this one particularly. But don't worry, I will be including in my Yap session the other 4 movies that Takashi Shimizu did. I know it sounds like a lot, but believe me, I think the input from those movies, especially the first original 2 before this movie, are important. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So before we get into the breakdown, and please remember, I yap and I go off topic, and you're just gonna have to get used to it. That's who I am. We're learning together. What is Juon even about? I am so glad you asked. For this movie specifically, several years prior to the main plot, Takeo Saeki murdered his wife Kayako after finding out she was in love with another man. He also killed their son Toshio and the family cat Mar. The murders created a curse, turning the family into vengeful ghosts, and then Takeo was eventually consumed by and then made a part of the curse. After that happened, whoever enters this house then becomes haunted, cursed, marked for death, if you will. Now, this is the main plot or curse from which all the movies stem from. There are some key details that are changed based on the Japanese version and the American version that I will get into later, but just know now that I prefer the Japanese version. I feel like it makes it more serious. I feel like it's just more diabolical and vile and evil, but we'll get into it later. Just put a pin in that, we'll come back to it. Now, Kayako is our main antagonist. You probably recognize her. You for damn sure recognize her scary little croak thing that she does. She is an icon. She's the main character. She's very cutesy, very demure. I know she goes around and snaps people's jaws off, but I stand by what I said. She is played by the iconic Takako Fuji. She played Kayako for the first 4 Japanese films and the first 2 American remakes. And not only is she an iconic woman of horror, she is also a trained contortionist and ballet dancer, which I'm sure comes in handy when you gotta crick and contort your body down a flight of stairs a bunch of times just to make sure you got the scene right. Yeah, icon. Kayako is what is known in Japanese culture as an onryo. An onryo is depicted as being a wronged woman who in death is a vengeful ghost out for revenge. That's what Kayako is, and you know, she gets a bad rap, but I think after my yapping, you might consider being like, I don't know, maybe I stand with her. Or maybe that's just me. I want you to know here and now that I am a Kayako apologist to my core. What can I say? I stand with women. Alright, I'm done yapping about that. Let's actually get into the movie breakdown. We open up our movie with the creepiest music I've ever heard in my entire life. Every time I hear this, it sends me into fight or flight, and I just freeze and pee my pants. On screen, you see a note to the audience saying, Juon, the curse of somebody who has died in the grip of a powerful rage. We see this a lot in the movies. They just want you to know what's going on. They want you to know she's pissed. Our movie officially begins with a flashback sequence. We see a man who is all bloodied and kind of crazy. He's ripping up a family picture. We see the body of a woman in a plastic bag. We also see a little boy who goes into the closet to seemingly hide from something. This is a flashback, of course, of the origins of our curse, the Saeki family murder. Just a heads up, this movie relies a lot on time jumps. Takashi Shimizu never goes in chronological order. We will jump to various characters in various time frames in the past, present, and future to get the full picture of the curse from their POV. You really have to pay attention to keep up with what's going on, especially if you do not speak Japanese and are relying on subtitles for context. But for me personally, I feel like this adds a layer of anxiety and confusion that just give the movie that oomph. Like, you have to work to figure out what's going on while at the same time trying to focus because you are being scared. You are being piss in your pants scared the whole time. And that brings us to our first chapter. Chapter 1, Rika. Rika is our main character and our main timeline. She works and or volunteers. That part's not really clear. She works and or volunteers at a social welfare office. She gets there one morning, she's clocking into work, and her boss is on the phone seemingly trying to track down a missing employee, one of his caseworkers. caseworkers, and the caseworkers are assigned to help out families with elderly family members who need some assistance. So he cannot find his employee, so instead of calling the proper authorities, he goes up to Rika and he's like, hey, I can't find this guy. I need you to take over this case and go to this family's house and look over their elderly person. That's what I need you to do. Got a little scatterbrain right there. Rika's like, I'm just a volunteer. This is not for me to do. This boss is such a dick. He literally doesn't care. He's like, you'll be fine. You got this, and just brushes her off. And she's left to do this because, like, who else is going to? She makes her way over to the family's house, and before she can even enter the property, she stops at the gate because she has bad vibes. Me personally, I've never had that feeling before. I've never been one to attract the spookies or sense the spookies, but if I did, in that moment, I would be like, you know what, this volunteer job, it's not worth it. I'm gonna go home. She sees a sign on the gate that says the Tokunaga family. So the Tokunaga family lives in this home. Rika enters the home and it is trashed. Like, it's not vandalized, but there's just snack wrappers and shit everywhere. I guess the ghosts need a little snacky snack from time to time. She finds an elderly woman on the floor, clearly in need of assistance. This elderly woman's name is Sachi. She's the one who needs the care. Sachi is not talkative. She's not responsive. She actually doesn't have any lines throughout the whole movie. Sachi looks like she's gone through it. She looks like she has not been sleeping. She's filthy. And while Rika's giving her a bath, she sees that outside, like on a clothes hanging line, there are sheets that are completely stained with urine, like deep, dark stains of urine. And she looks behind her and sees that on the floor, there is also a huge, deep, dark stain of urine. So of course, from Rika's POV, I'm sure she's thinking incontinence, right? This is an elderly woman. But we know that this woman is being scared so badly that she's literally pissing herself. Now, this is the part where I'm going to get into my frustrations with Rika, because me, if I go into a home, the homeowners are not there. Sachi is completely alone. She's an elderly woman who cannot care for herself. The house is trash. This woman is in unsanitary conditions. I'm calling 911 or whatever the emergency number is for Japan. 911 in Japan. 110. 110. Hello? Yeah, I need help. But I guess rent is due for Rika because, you know, she just gets Sachi settled and she goes on to try and clean up the house. While trying to clean up the house, she finds that ripped up picture from the beginning flashback, and it's a mom, a dad, and a little boy. And she finds that the mother's face is completely ripped out of it. Creepy, scary. Yeah, I know. That would also be alarm bells, bad vibes, red flags everywhere. But she proceeds as normal. She proceeds to clean up, making her way upstairs, where she finds in one of the bedrooms a taped up closet. Now, if I see a taped up closet, I'm presuming there's something in there that needs to stay in there, right? Well, she approaches the closet and a cat like meows at her as soon as she like starts to take a step towards it, which is scary. And she hears shifting and moving and crawling up in the ceiling above her, which is the attic, which again, from her POV, you could assume is just like cats, but there's tape on that door and that's scary. But because Rika is not me, because Rika is Rika, she takes the tape off of the door, revealing of course a cat, but also a little boy. Rika runs downstairs to ask Sachi who this little boy is, and of course Sachi's no help. She didn't say nothing. Rika then calls her boss, and for why, I don't know. He was kind of a dick earlier. I can't imagine what the fuck he's gonna do in this scenario. But I guess he tells her to wait there and he's gonna come and do something. As soon as Rika hangs up, because she's on the family's like landline, she hangs up and in comes a call. She lets the answering machine pick it up and it is someone named Hitomi. Hitomi is letting the homeowner know like, hey, I'm worried about mom, please call me back when you get the chance. Again, if I'm Rika, I'm assuming that this person, mom, who's referencing mom, is Sachi. She's worried about Sachi. Either way, whoever this is on the other line seems to know the homeowner, seems to know the family. I'm picking up that phone immediately and being like, hey, your mother, or whoever this is to you, was left alone. The homeowners are not here. There's a little boy taped upstairs in the closet. But that's not Rika. That's not how Rika moves through life. She's Rika. So she goes to check on little boy. The little boy's just at the top of the stairs being as scary as possible. He tells her that his name is Toshio. Rika then goes to check on Sachi, who is sitting up in kind of like a catatonic state. Oh wait, she does talk. She does talk in this scene, but this is the only line she has. She's rocking back and forth, like murmuring to herself, I told her so, I told her so, I tried to tell her, something like that. Rika gets Sachi to lay down, and that is when she finally comes face to face with our ghost. There is a black silhouette of a woman peering down at Sachi, and then glances over to Rika, where then she passes out. Thus concludes Rika's chapter. But don't forget, she's the main timeline. We will always come back to her. Chapter 2, Katsuya. This chapter takes place a little while before Rika's chapter, so we're going back to the past. We open up with a couple named Katsuya and Kazumi. They're doing their thing, getting ready in the morning. Katsuya mentions to Kazumi that his mother has really been sleeping in late lately, and Kazumi is like, yeah, well, she's up all night. I can hear her downstairs. She wakes me up in the middle of the night. And we see that Katsuya's mother is none other than Sachi. And something that I never noticed as a kid watching these movies is that in Rika's chapter, Sachi's hair is white. In Katsuya's chapter, Sachi's hair is black. And we know that Katsuya's chapter is before Rika's. And so that means in that time frame, this ghost has been scaring Sachi so bad that not only is she pissing herself, not only is she losing sleep, but her hair has turned white. That is just so sad. Like, what did this woman do? Kazumi lets Katsuya know, like, hey, don't forget, your sister is coming over here tonight for family dinner. Katsuya goes off to work. Kazumi stays home to help take care of Sachi. And remember, the original caseworker for Sachi is MIA. We don't ever find out what happens to him. We can assume though he did. Kazumi takes a nap in the middle of the day, and when she wakes up, she finds more trash around, and of course she assumes that's her mother-in-law, and she is then lured upstairs by noises, by creepies. She finds a cat on the stairs, and she sees two little ghostly child hands come around the corner and like grab it, which lures her upstairs further, where she walks into one of the rooms. Off camera she screams, and then we cut to later in the day when Katsuya comes home. He's looking for his wife. He goes upstairs and finds her in bed in that bedroom she walked into. She is completely paralyzed. She's awake. She's trying to say something, but she just can't. Like, she's so scared that she's paralyzed. He's freaking out, kind of wondering what to do. Our little ghost boy, who is Toshio, of course, Toshio is dead, presents himself to Katsuya. We get a little jump scare where Katsuya asks Toshio, like, what's your name? And he opens his mouth, completely black, by the way, and makes like a scary cat noise. And when I say like a cat noise or a meow, I mean like one where a cat is like scared or being vicious. It's creepy. It's always creepy. That little bitch Mar, yeah, he's scary. He has a very small role in this curse, but he does it well. Toshio disappears, and then Kazumi dies. The life just drains from her. She's gone. Katsuya momentarily freaks out until all the worry and panic kind of drains from his face into anger. And then that's when we realize, oh, he's become possessed. In the beginning of the movie, in our opening scene, in our opening flashback, we see Takeo Saeki, who has committed the murder against his family. We see him like chewing on his fingers, and we see Katsuya do that right before he becomes possessed. So he's possessed. Katsuya has left the building. Please allow me to introduce Takeo. A bit after that, Hitomi, his sister, has arrived to the house. I don't know if you've pieced it together. Hitomi is the one who called and left the voicemail in Rika's chapter. Hitomi and Katsuya are Sachi's children. Keep up. Hitomi is downstairs preparing for dinner. The camera slowly pans upstairs to show that Katsuya is carrying Kazumi's dead body into the next bedroom. Hitomi hears this and proceeds to like make her way towards the stairs. And this is something I didn't mention before, but like whenever the spirits are nearby, people get like this high-pitched ringing in their ear. That's how you know shit's about to pop off, typically. Hitomi finds her brother sitting on the stairs looking crazy. He looks really absolutely insane. And he's like, oh, sorry, this is not really a good time. Kazumi's not here. I actually really need you to go. And she's confused, but he just kind of grabs her and pushes her out the door, all the while muttering to himself, that child's not mine. She deceived me. Again, remember, possessed. He manages to shove her out, and he slowly and very creepily makes his way back up the stairs into the bedroom where he has put Kazumi's dead body. And there's like a window overlooking the front door entrance, a window that is attached to the bedroom that he's just walked into. And we see in the window our ghost. Like, she just kind of puts her face there, and it's real creepy. Chapter 3, Hitomi. Now, Hitomi's chapter begins with her in the middle of leaving that voicemail to Katsuya and Kazumi, the one we heard in Rika's chapter. So Rika's chapter and Hitomi's chapter are overlapping. Please keep up. She is at her place of work, like her office building, and she's just kind of wandering the halls. She feels something behind her. She's scared. So I guess she feels something behind her or hears something that we as the audience are not hearing. So she ducks off into one of the restrooms, into one of the stalls. This was never something that freaked me out as a kid, but upon rewatching it for this video, it really did. As Hitomi is in one of the stalls, somebody comes into the restroom and very slowly walks past her stall, and we can see like the shadow of somebody walking by very slowly and kind of like crick walking, if that makes sense. And of course we know who it is, and they just kind of go into the stall next to her. It's really creepy though. It really freaks me out, because I wouldn't even wash my hands. I don't care. I'm dipping out of that bathroom as quickly as I can. But anyways, as she's still in the restroom stall, her hotline blings. Her cell phone is receiving a call from Katsuya, her brother. And as we know at this point, Katsuya is still MIA. She answers the phone, and of course it's not Katsuya.
もしもし、お兄ちゃん?
We hear the iconic death rattle, you know, the spooky, scary sound that Kayako makes, and she immediately hangs up. What is funny as shit about this part is that we know that the ghost is next to her in the bathroom stall, but upon like hearing this phone call, the ghost like bangs on the stall like, you're being rude while I'm in here trying to take a dookie. Bitch! And I know that in Japan, they are much more socially aware and like polite. You are not to like answer phone calls on the subway. I could be wrong, but they're a lot more like, you don't behave a certain way in public. And so I could see answering a phone call in a bathroom stall while it's loud. This is a very private area where we're trying to do our intimates and you know, go to the bathroom. I could see that as being rude, a bit of a taboo in Japan. Again, I'm not Japanese, I don't know for sure, but I could see it. But I just think it's so funny that this bitch is out here murdering people, but she draws a hard line in social etiquette. I just thought that was so funny. Anyways, Hitomi finally comes out of the stall, and as she's leaving, her purse charm gets snagged on the stall door. As she goes down to pick it up, out of the stall next to her, of course, comes our ghost. A dark, ghostly woman figure thing making the croaking sound. She runs up out of there and goes to the security office where she's telling the security guard like, hey, there's something creepy down there. I need you to go check it out. He does. She can see the security camera live feed from the office that she's in. So she sees him looking in each individual office on that floor. Eventually, he does get up to the ladies' room where he stands there, and a dark entity pulls him in. We find out later that he actually dies. They'll tell you later in the movie, but I'm bringing it up now to say that he never went into the house. As far as we know, he never went into the house. He is just a security guard who works at Hitomi's office. So the curse kind of plays fast and loose. You can be cursed by interacting with somebody who's cursed, or you can just be a pawn to scare somebody who is actually cursed. All she did was interact with him very briefly. All he did was do his job trying to earn a check, and he still got just to, I guess, instill more fear and terror into Hitomi. I guess. Because I always thought it was just something that she sees to scare her. No, he actually does die. Tragic. Anyways, after she sees that, she just leaves. She goes back to her apartment building. On the way up the elevator, we can see like Hoshio staring at her through the glass window going up every floor. She doesn't see it, but it's creepy. She gets to her apartment, and on her landline, her home phone, whatever, she receives a call again from Katsuya. She answers it, and he actually does answer this time. He's like, hey, I'm outside your apartment building. What unit are you in? I'm coming up. And almost immediately there's somebody knocking on her door, and she's like on the 7th floor or something. So obviously we know that's something's up. She looks out the peephole. She does see her brother, but when she opens the door, there's nobody there. And out of the phone that she's holding in her hand is the death rattle. She runs into her bedroom, unplugs the phone because like, I'm not answering no more damn phone calls from spirits. She crawls underneath her covers, which I'm sorry to tell you, babe, unless you're 8 years old, that just doesn't work. She turns on the TV, and this is one of like the best scares in the movie. She's watching like a news anchor do some kind of news report, and of course the TV starts distorts the face of the news anchor on the television screen into this like creepy, I don't know, it looks like something you would see in Courage the Cowardly Dog. Like, it's really creepy, and of course the death rattle starts coming out of the TV. She shuts that shit off and just goes under the covers. Like, what else is she gonna do? She finds her purse charm under there, and if you recall, she never did grab her purse charm after it fell off of her purse, so how could that be there? Well, at the end of her bed, we see some slight movement. She gets kind of yanked under ever so slightly, and after lifting up the covers on her bed to see what the hell that was, we see Kayako on her chest, and she is dragged under into the further. And that concludes Hitomi. Chapter 4, Toyama. Now, Toyama is my favorite favorite chapter just because it's kind of sad. And also this is where we start getting into some Easter eggs from the first two original Juon the Curse movies. You do not need to have seen Juon the Curse to understand any of this film, but Juon the Curse 1 and 2, they're not separate from this timeline. This is actually a continuation of that story. Again, you don't need to know any of that story, but I will explain later after the breakdown why it's interesting to know some of the extra context. Now, Toyama's chapter begins where Rika's left off. We see Rika's boss show up to the house finally, there to do God knows what, to help God knows who. He goes to check on Sachi first and realizes that she's dead. She has gone on home to glory. And then he finds Rika in the corner of the room, paralyzed with fear. The police finally get involved, and one of our detectives, Detective Igarashi, is interviewing the boss, asking him for information of the homeowners. We see Igarashi go back into the house where he meets up with his partner, the older Detective Nakagawa. I mentioned that he is older because I really do think of them as Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, and I was going to refer to them as such for this video, but it's just kind of disrespectful. But just know that Igarashi is Nakagawa's young ward, and they are there to protect Japan against Detective Igarashi gives Nakagawa the cell phone number of the homeowner, Katsuya, the one who's been missing. They call the cell phone and they hear ringing coming from upstairs. As a quick side note, in this scene, we see a lot of crime scene photographers and a lot of other detectives and police officers in this house. And it's creepy and kind of sad to know that there are going to be a bunch of other stories and timelines that we do not know what's going to happen. But we for sure know that since they have stepped foot into that house, they are now marked for death. Everybody in that room is going to succumb to the curse eventually, and that's kind of a bummer. Everybody's just trying to do their job. Everybody's just trying to go about life, but Kayako is not having any of it. Anyways, they go upstairs to find where the ringing is coming from. They get into one of the bedrooms, the bedroom that had the taped up closet, and they hear the ringing coming from further up still. So they open up the closet and we see that the entrance to the attic is in there. They crawl into the attic. Not only do they find the cell phone, but also the dead bodies of Katsuya and Kazumi. We cut to the hospital where Rika has been admitted for, I'm guessing, shock. Personally, me, I would need to be comatose immediately because I'm not living through that. No, you're gonna have to sedate me. She is there with her friend Mariko, who is there for moral support. Mariko leaves and in comes Detective Nakagawa to talk to her about what happened. Rika is really concerned about the boy, Toshio. The detective said, we didn't find any trace of any boy there. Nakagawa gets like a page, like a beeper rings, and then he runs out into the hallway to make a phone call on a payphone. I don't know, I was born in 1997. He gets this page and it's from Igarashi letting him know like, hey, I have some interesting information that I think you need to see. We go back to what I'm going to refer to as HQ, which is basically their office, their headquarters, their police station. And Igarashi lets Nakagawa know like, hey, this is not the first family who has either died or disappeared while living in that house. And in fact, 5 years ago, there was a brutal murder in that house from which all of this started, which is when we get our backstory that 5 years ago, Takeo Saeki murdered his wife Kayako, and their son Toshio has been missing ever since. Detective Nakagawa, of course, realizes that this is the same Toshio that Rika has claimed to have seen that night. Igarashi also notes that Kayako's body, much like the Tokunaga's, was found in the attic. It is also mentioned here that Hitomi is missing and the security guard from her office has been found dead. We cut to a different scene and we finally meet Tokunaga. Tokunaga is on a bike approaching a young girl who's playing outside on the street. This is his daughter Izumi, who appears to be maybe 9 or 10. This is important for later. He's hanging out with her and they're having a sweet daughter-father bonding moment when up walks Igarashi. Toyama is standoffish. He does not trust Igarashi. He even pulls Izumi behind him because he's like, I don't know you, what do you want? Igarashi lets him know of their situation, like, we need help on our case and we know that you were the lead detective on the Saeki murder case. Which, if we stop right there for just a second, we know the Saeki murder happened 5 years ago. So he was on this case and implied to be in that house 5 years ago. How he has survived the curse for all this time and what he has been through in the last 5 years, I couldn't tell you. But it's probably why he's so hesitant here. But he really doesn't put up up much of a fight when Igarashi asks him for help because he just he tells Izumi to go home and he just goes off with him. Back at HQ, we see Nakagawa talking to Rika and, going over again the details of this boy she claimed to have seen. And he lets her know, hey, it could not have been the boy in the picture here. It could not have been Toshio because he's been missing for 5 years and he would be much older. Also, Tokunagas did not have any children. So I don't know who you thought you saw, but you're wrong. Which he doesn't really actually imply that. I'm just a little stinker. They're more so just confused. We jump to a necessary but unnecessary scene where we see Rika's boss. His body is found. We knew he wasn't going to survive that. We jump back to HQ where Detective Nakagawa is walking Rika out and Detective Igarashi is walking Toyama in. Toyama and Rika kind of look at each other real quick as they're passing by, almost as if they kind of sense the impending doom to come for them on each other. I just kind of thought it was kind of sad and kind of funny how they kind of just looked at each other like, oh, you're I'm fucked. We're fucked. They know they're fucked. They sit Toyama down and they begin to show him the security camera footage of when Hitomi is running out of the bathroom at her office and the security guard goes to start looking at all the rooms. But before they can see him be pulled into the ladies' room, a detective knocks on the door and lets Igarashi know Rika's boss has been found murdered. So Igarashi and Nakagawa leave the room, leaving Toyama in there by himself. He continues to watch the tape and of course he sees the security guard get pulled into the bathroom. We knew that. But he also sees the same shadowy black figure kind of come out of the bathroom and manifest itself into the form of a woman. She walks up very intentionally to the camera, puts her face all in it, opens her eyes real big and scary, and of course makes the death croak. This sends Toyama running out of that office. We get a creepy little scene of Rika in bed being haunted by Kayako and Toshio. Kayako's kind of like just staring down at her from the head of her bed, and Toshio's just sitting at the foot of her bed being a little creep. Rika seems to be like paralyzed. I don't know. I'd throw a punch if I saw that. She must have been paralyzed. We jump to both Detective Nakagawa and Igarashi looking for Toyama. They went to his house. They don't know where he's at. It's the middle of the night. But we see that Toyama has gone to the Saeki house with 2 gas canisters. He's ready to burn that bitch down. But before he can set fire to the rain, across the kitchen where he's at, he sees a light coming from the other side of the house. Again, it is nighttime at this point, but when he opens the door, he's looking into another room and it is daytime. Something this curse does to either protect itself or with its victims is distort time. The curse, inside at least the parameters of the house, will show you the past and the future. Toyama's looking into this room and he sees coming down the stairs a teenage girl. The teenage girl stops at the bottom of the stairs, turns around and stares at Toyama looking kind of horrified. And we hear other teenage girls upstairs saying, Izumi, where are you going, Izumi? I don't know if it registers necessarily that Toyama is looking at his daughter in this moment, because when we first see Toyama's daughter, she's a little girl. What we are looking at now is probably a 16-year-old, but clearly whatever she thought she was looking at scared the piss out of her. Either way, we are clearly looking into the future. The house is showing Toyama the future. Izumi runs out of the house and we still hear other teenage girls upstairs. So Toyama proceeds to make his way upstairs. It turns back to nighttime, to darkness. Me personally, this scene was terrifying because I'm not walking around a scary house at night. I'm gonna wait till morning to burn it down. Thank you. Toyama makes it to the very top of the stairs and he's looking into one of the bedrooms. He's looking in through a crack in the door. We can see there's 3 teenage girls up there, and one by one they all notice something on the other side of the room out of the camera shot. When all of them are out of frame, we hear screams and then silence, and then the room falls back to dark. And out of nowhere pops Kayako's scary ass. This scene, I hadn't seen this movie for a while before watching it for this video, and this scene scared the piss and shit out of me. Toyama runs downstairs and seemingly loses function of his legs, trips over nothing. He ends up on the ground. Nakagawa and Igarashi rush in from either side and end up on the ground with him for some reason. A very united front, them. All 3 of these men are then lying down on the ground, watching Kayako come down the stairs. Toyama miraculously regains functionality of his legs and bolts out the front door, leaving Igarashi and Nakagawa to meet their fate. Chapter 5, Izumi. Now, when we first meet Izumi in Toyama's chapter, we are still in the main timeline, and Izumi is a little girl. In Izumi's chapter, she is now a teenager. So we are years past the main timeline. Izumi is walking down the street with two of her friends, and she stops at a missing persons poster with 3 teenage girls on it. We can assume that these are the 3 teenage girls that we saw Toyama witness in the house, the ones who got. The girls make their way to school, and they're looking in the hallway at like a bulletin board with pictures from a class trip. Izumi doesn't find any of hers or any of the girls who went missing's photos. Her teacher lets her know that he will get them developed later on in the week. Later on, Izumi gets home. Her mom is sitting on the floor looking at what looks to be a remembrance shrine for Toyama, her dad. So we don't know how, we don't know when, but Toyama succumbs to the curse between Rika's timeline and this current timeline. Toyama got. And Izumi's mom, who we kind of briefly see earlier in the film when she's a little girl, looks way different. She looks like she's not been getting sleep. She looks like she's kind of losing it. We can only assume, because she has lived with 2 family members who have been cursed, who have been in the house, that she probably is experiencing the curse as well. In this same scene, we also overhear a news broadcast. 23-year-old missing social worker Rika has been found dead. There has been no marks made on her body. So, spoiler alert, Rika does not survive her timeline. Very, very sad, but nobody does. Anyways, Izumi goes into her room. She looks out the window and she quickly closes her curtains, almost as if she's being stalked by someone or something. Kind of recluses up in her room. She's terrified of something. Something is going on with her. Later on in the week, her 2 friends stop by her house to bring her those developed photos. They're kind of creeped out because mom, again, is super creepy. And when they get to Izumi's room, they are even more creeped out because Izumi looks like she's not been sleeping. She looks like she's not been taking care of herself. She looks like she's going crazy. When they get in her room, they see that she has taped up her window with a newspaper. She freaks out when they try to open her curtains. And then she finally admits to them that she was with her 3 missing friends the day that they went missing. They went to what was said to be one of the most haunted houses in Japan. She urged her friends to not go into that house, and she flips out. She loses it. Her friends leave, and as they are walking away, her mother lets them know, this is exactly how my husband behaved before he died, which is something you would tell 2 teenage girls. Yeah, for sure. As they're making their way home, the 2 girls open up the photos because they forgot to give them to Izumi. They open up the photos and see that Izumi's eyes and the 3 missing girls' eyes are all blacked out. Later, we cut back to Izumi coming out of her room and finding her dad sitting on the middle of the floor looking absolutely terrifying once again. He seems to be trying to tell her something, but can't. He's like reaching out for her, and she tells him, I saw you that day at the house. I knew I saw you. So she definitely saw her dad, and she knew it was her dad, but the thing is, her dad was dead at that point, so of course she would look freaked out. He stands up, and I expected him to like do something scary, but he just kind of slowly stands up, and she wakes up. It was a dream. She wakes up to find that the newspaper on her window has been torn off in certain pieces, and when she looks, she sees the eyes of all 3 of her missing friends staring back at her. They kind of chase her around her apartment a little bit. They're all blue and dead and creepy until she finally gets got by Kayako. She is pulled headfirst into her father's memorial shrine. And it's sad because once this happens, right next to her father's memorial photo pops her memorial photo. And it's sad because I just know that Toyama would hate that his whole family had to succumb to this curse. We know that's not what he wanted. We know he loved his daughter, which is tragic, but this curse is non-biased and does not care if it annihilates an entire family. And now our final chapter, chapter 6, Kayako. I'm not sure how far into the future this is, but I can imagine that it is a significant amount of time. Rika is still working with elderly people as a social worker. She's caring for this one man. She leaves him inside while she steps outside to make a phone call. And this is how you know it's been far in the future if you didn't get it from like Izumi's chapter. But it is Mariko at the other end of the phone. And Mariko is the friend she was with in the hospital the day she was found at the house. And she says to Mariko, oh my god, I haven't seen you in such a long time. We haven't caught up in such a long time. So it's been a significant amount of time. They made plans to get together. The whole time behind her, we see the old man she's taking care of playing peekaboo with something that is not there. We see later in the reflection of a window that he is actually playing with Toshio. I don't know if that means he's cursed per se. Maybe Toshio will take it easy on him. I highly doubt it. But clearly he is not bothered by this little boy, so I don't know, maybe they'll leave him alone. We get a quick scene of Rika in the shower where we see our iconic hand in the hair scene. She then goes to meet up with Mariko, they hang out and go to lunch. While at lunch, Mariko mentions to Rika, I have a student that has not shown up at all for school since the beginning of the term, and I can't get in touch with his parents, so I need to do a home visit. While they're in the middle of this conversation, something brushes past Rika's leg, and we see it is Mar, the cat. Rika looks under the table and finds Toshio sitting there being very, very creepy. She falls out in the middle of this restaurant. Rika goes back home, takes a nap where she has a nightmare of a bunch of cats in her room. When she wakes up, she briefly sees Toshio in the corner of her room before getting a phone call from Mariko. I don't know why Mariko called her to tell her this. She tells Rika, like, I'm at that boy's house. I'm at that student's house who hasn't shown up for school. His parents are not here. I've been here for an hour and they still haven't showed up. And while Mariko is telling her this, Rika hears a cat in the background and immediately she knows what's up. She asks Mariko what house she was at exactly, and instead of getting an answer, she hears a loud cat's meow and she immediately knows what's going on. All right, let's pause right here. This is the big gripe I have about this movie that I never noticed before. I can't figure it out. I haven't exactly looked it up and I'm not going to. I just really like bitching and complaining. Mariko is a teacher. She gets a roster of children that she's going to be having in her class for the school year. I'm assuming. I don't know how Japanese school systems work, but I do assume you have to enroll them and, then you get your set list of students. Toshio Saeki at this point has been missing for more than 5 years. Probably significantly more than 5 years at this point. With that being said, with this child being missing as long as he has, why is he on the school roster? How did he manage to get on the attendance list? I'm very confused by that. They really just needed something to push this plot to where it gets to. Because I know Kayako Saeki didn't take her ghost ass up there and enroll her son into school. I know that. But I digress. It is a movie with a huge plot hole. Anyways, Rika takes off to go to the house to, I guess, save Mariko. Mariko is there with Toshio and she turns around and he's no longer sitting where she last saw him. So she goes to find him and she makes her way upstairs. Rika gets to the house just in time to find Mariko being pulled up into the attic by the ghosts. By the way, when Rika gets there, she did have to duck under some police tape. Don't know why the police tape is still there after all these years. That's number one. Number two, not sure why Mariko didn't see the police tape. I don't know. The curse manipulates a lot of things. I'm just bitching and moaning. Rika makes her way up into the attic to try and, I guess, save Mariko, but instead of getting her friend, she sees crawling towards her Kayako. Rika gets out of there and she runs downstairs past a mirror where she sees that in her reflection is Kayako. So she backs up and looks into the mirror. I don't know why. I'd be a runner, I would turn into Sha'Carri Richardson and get my ass out of there. Anyway, she makes her way back to the mirror, and this is, again, when we get a little confusing, again, they needed something to push this movie to the finish line. Rika discovers that she can see ghosts by doing this. We flash back to a couple points in the movie where she has done this and has been able to see the ghosts. So when she does this, she sees staring back at her in the mirror Kayako. Kayako comes out of her shirt to do a quick jump scare and then disappears. And then we get the iconic scene of Kayako coming down the stairs. And throughout the entire movie, Kayako has been like clean. She's not had blood on her dress. She's been clean and ghostly and white and scary. But in this scene, we see her in a plastic bag covered in blood, seemingly to emulate her right after she was murdered. She makes her way down the stairs. At a certain point, down the stairs, she does this like ghoulish moan that I have to mute every single time I watch this movie. I will not watch this movie and listen to that audio. It is so scary. If I have the balls to, I will insert it here just so you can be traumatized along with me. Anyways, while Rika is just sitting there, she gets the bright idea to put on her ghost glasses and look at Kayako. And when Kayako lifts her head back up, she sees herself. Like, she sees herself in Kayako's dress and with her hair, like she sees herself as the ghost. And we get a flashback montage of Rika as Kayako in every scene in the movie where we see Kayako. Now, this used to confuse me at first because it seems like it was her the whole time, but no, it was not her the whole time. This curse is petty. This curse is hateful and wants revenge and wants everybody to suffer as much as it has suffered. I say the curse and not Kayako because I do believe that Kayako is kind of just a vessel and is not responsible for what is going on. It's just the rage of the curse. And so the curse wants Rika to endure everything that Kayako has endured, even being the antagonist in many people's stories. And this is confirmed because once we get done with the flashbacks, Kayako has disappeared, and coming down the stairs is a bloodied Takeo Saeki. He approaches Rika, reaches out his hand to her. We see a quick flashback of Kayako when she was murdered by Takeo. We see a ghostly Toshio up at the top of the stairs just watching, and it's safe to assume that everything he did to Kayako, he does to Rika. And as she is screaming no, it just turns to black. We don't get to see what happens, but we know what happens. Our ending scene is shots of an empty Japan that are littered with missing person posters. We go back to the Saeki house, into the attic, and as the movie is ending, the camera is slowly zooming in on a dead woman in the attic, who we can see is Rika, but she has like the hair of Kayako. The camera stops, the music stops, and she shoots open her bloody eyes and lets out a death croak, and then the movie ends. I love this movie, if it's not obvious. I really, really do. It is definitely a staple of my childhood. It traumatized me in all the best ways. I do feel that The Grudge, the American remake, was much more scary, and that's because not only did they intensify Takako Fuji's like makeup and make her look like significantly scarier, but it's also a huge gore factor at play with the American remake. The obvious bigger scare scene in The Grudge being the jawless girl scene, which actually came from the original Juon the Curse. The CGI was much different at the time, but it was still scary as hell, and I love that they recreated it in The Grudge. However, they didn't directly copy and paste. Well, they kind of did, but they didn't do everything in Juon the Grudge in the American remake. In fact, some of the main things that they did in Juon the Grudge, they actually put into The Grudge 2. For example, Katsuya becoming possessed. They did that in the second American Grudge. They also included what they did with Rika in The Grudge 2, but I think it was far less effective. Rika being affected by the curse in such a way where she is put into it and forced to relive Kayako's pain, that was very well done. It was very sad, actually, because I feel like with Rika, they showed Kayako in a very sorrowful light. I felt that when we saw Rika as Kayako, she looked sad to be there. Like, she didn't want to be there. And in the second Grudge movie, Sarah Michelle Gellar's sister, who is the main antagonist, Aubrey, she ends up suffering the same fate. And we get to see her as Kayako as well. But I feel like in that movie, for the audience, it was pandering to. It was more based on like making it look scary, which it was. It did a really good job. And we also got to see what happened to Aubrey and Kayako. But something about Juon was much more intimate and tragic. But throughout Juon the Grudge 1 and The Grudge 2, there is never a moment when you don't feel completely hopeless, completely alone. Because no matter what you do, this curse is going to come for you. Now, I did say I wanted to talk a bit about Juon the Curse and Juon the Curse 2. Remember, these are movies that were made before Juon the Grudge. They were straight to video, and they are in the same universe as Juon the Grudge. If you know a little bit of context with these movies, some things in Juon the Grudge make a little bit more sense, and so bear with me as I give you the story. Now, in the American version, The Grudge, we know the curse to be Takeo Saeki murdering his wife Kayako because he found out that she was in love with her professor because she was writing about it in her journal. He then goes on to snap Kayako's neck, drown the family cat, and drown their son. Kayako was like a bit of a stalker or whatever, a detail that I will get into later why I don't really like. She sent this professor many letters, and one day he goes over to her house to return them and talk to her. That's when he finds her dead body. He finds Toshio and then quickly realizes that Toshio is not like alive, like he's a ghost, and then later goes on to commit suicide. Well, we know that in Juon the Grudge, some of those details are a little different. We know that Takeo Saeki murdered Kayako because she was in love with another man. We don't know who, as far as this movie goes. We know that he did kill the family cat, but Toshio's been missing. His body was never found. We don't know if he's dead or alive. Well, we, the audience, knows, but the police in this investigation, they never figured out what happened to him. And something I actually forgot to mention earlier is that Takeo Saeki was actually found dead in the road by a neighbor. But let let me give you some context that comes from Juon the Curse. In Juon the Curse, our origins are far more vile. So Takeo Saiki finds out that his wife Kayako is actually in love with their son Toshio's teacher. Takeo, of course, murders Kayako, murders the cat, but doesn't touch Toshio. Toshio obviously does become a part of the curse. We don't see him die. I know we do see him speaking to the ghost of his mother. I like to think that Toshio just submitted to the curse. I choose to believe that Kayako would not do anything to hurt him, and we don't have any evidence proving otherwise. So I do believe that he just kind of submitted to the curse because he wanted to be with his mother. Anyways, Toshio doesn't come to school for a long time, so his teacher comes and checks on him. The teacher shows up and just kind of hangs out with Toshio for a while. He doesn't know where his parents are at. He also doesn't know that Toshio's a ghost. But while there, he finds Kayako's body up in the attic. I think at this point he also realizes that Toshio is dead, like a ghost. Before he gets a chance to leave, he receives a phone call from Takeo Saiki, and Takeo says, "You can have my son because that's yours, but I'm gonna take your baby, or I'm gonna take your child. I'll take care of your child," something along those lines. This teacher had a pregnant wife at home, and Takeo Saiki went to her home and murdered her and cut out her unborn child. The teacher gets got by the curse before he can ever go home and see his wife like that, and we see Takeo going down the street with a trash bag, hitting it on things, and we know what's in that trash bag. It's absolutely vile. He is crazy, he is wicked, he is evil. He trips over some trash cans, and out of the trash cans comes Kayako to exact her revenge and kill her husband. That detail makes sense to why they found his body in the road. That was mentioned in Juon the Grudge. It also helps explain why when Katsuya was possessed, he kept saying to himself, "She deceived me, that child's not mine." But I do wish they would have kept that element in Juon the Grudge. I wish they would have even taken it over to the Grudge movies in America. It is intense, of course, because of the baby element. When we think about the innocent people who die in these movies, that is the pinnacle of innocence there. It is tragic, it is evil, it is vile. In the Juon Origin series that came out in 2020 that needs to have a second damn season, they kind of revive that element, even though nothing about that has anything to do with Kayako's story, which I loved. But I just feel like it adds a layer of evil to Takeo Saiki. And in saying that, I'm gonna segue over to my beef of Juon the Grudge and the Grudge series, specifically the Grudge 2. I say that Kayako is our antagonist because I truly believe she's a victim. A problem I had with the American Grudges is they very much made Kayako look crazy. First of all, making her obsessed with her professor, almost as if to excuse the fact that Takeo murdered his wife. Like, yeah, being in love with another man sucks. I don't think that gives you grounds to murder anybody. I especially don't think that gives you grounds to be a family annihilator, but I digress. But specifically the Grudge 2. I love that movie. I do. It is the weaker out of them, I do believe, but I do love it. It is scary. However, I know that we need to have horror explained. I know we need a reason, we need a way, and I guess for some people, rage and hurt and pain and sorrow manifesting itself into a curse just wasn't enough. And so we needed to give Kayako a reason why she turned into a ghost. And that reason was her mother. They decided that in order for the antagonist of the Grudge 2, Aubrey, and her little boo thing there, the way that they needed to try and stop the curse was to come up with a reason, or like a tangible, touchable, real reason that it was happening. Something that could be stopped. Some kind of something. They didn't actually go anywhere with it, but I don't like that they threw this in. They threw in that Kayako's mother was an exorcist and was feeding her the souls of the people she exorcised. And that's the reason why when she died the way she did, she became a ghost. And I don't like that. I don't like that they keep trying to give us reasons aside from Takeo Saiki as to why she is the way that she is now. Kayako Saiki is a victim. Toshio Saiki is a victim. Takeo Saiki is the real monster. But he's not shown nearly as much. Now, I can live with her being the face of the curse. What I don't like is when they try to explain a reason why she ended up the way she did, or try and give us a good reason as to why he did what he did to her. She didn't need to be crazy. She didn't have to have a exorcist mother. She was a wife and a mother. And even though we don't get to see the life that she lived before she died, I'm almost certain that Takeo was violent towards her and Toshio. Like, you can't convince me that he just snapped. I'm pretty sure she was a victim of domestic violence for a long time before that. So to chop up the curse to exorcism and evil spirits and bad choices seems like a cop-out to me, or an attempted cop-out. I do believe these movies touch on violence against women, especially in Japan, especially back in the day. And again, I think it is fine to have Kayako be the face of vengeance and rage and just not forgiving what has been done to you. For me personally, and I'm just yapping, they have made so many of these movies suck. They have made so many bad Juon, Grudge movies. They might as well just make a redemption arc movie. I don't know how you appease Kayako's spirit. Again, I don't think that it is her. I think it is the curse. Anger and rage formed together and now are using her as a vessel. I don't know how you appease it, especially since Takeo Saeki, her murderer, is dead. But I would like to see them, like, let her rest. Let her go to heaven. I don't know. I'm just yapping, and I am a Kayako apologist till the day I die. At least let the cat and Toshio go. Like, my goodness. That baby didn't deserve that. But anyways, that's all the yapping I got. Thanks for sticking around and hearing me out. I don't know what I'm going to talk about next time. I am weighing talking about Travis the Chimp and reading Reddit stories. Two very opposite ends of the field there. But if you liked this, especially being my first video, go ahead and like and subscribe. I don't know how often I'll be posting. Again, this is my world. You're just living in it. But thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.